Chapter 302 Countermeasures. In the evening, Qin Yan was repeatedly pacing back and forth in the Qin residence's guest hall. His face was somewhat anxious. Earlier that day, the servant who was assigned to bring Han Li a meal reported that he wasn't present. It seemed Han Li hadn't returned during the night. This caused this rarely worried person to become worried, not out of concern for Han Li's safety but rather because his bodyguard suddenly disappeared without saying anything. How would his Qin clan respond to any harm done by the Devil Dao? Qin Ping, please go and see whether young Master Han has returned. Once there's any news, please immediately come and tell me. Qin Yan commanded somewhat anxiously. Yes, Lord. Qin Ping responded with secret delight. Then, he ran out of the hall in an instant. From his perspective, it seemed Qin Yan had become increasingly concerned for young Master Han, further proving that he hadn't chosen incorrectly. It seemed that his position was soon about to rise in the Qin residence. But Lord, use occasionally going out is a very ordinary matter. There is no need to be so worried or anxious. Within the hall, although Qin Yan's most favored third wife said a few exonerating words about Han Li, her voice contained an obviously sour tone. This was no surprise. Ever since Han Li had arrived at the Qin residence, Qin Yan had always kept Han Li close at his side. The Qin clan young masters and madams who were originally doted on were no longer supported. The third wife's children were also among them. She couldn't help but feel greatly jealous. Humph. Woman, what do you know? Naturally, Qin Yan heard the meaning in his third wife's words. However, he was worrying about the life and death of his own clan while this woman was occupied with this small matter of jealousy. After he glared at her, he didn't pay any further attention to her. Qin Yan's attitude naturally caused the third wife to feel wronged, but she knew that what her lord husband hated the most was a woman's shrew bickering. She could only resist her urge to vent her complaints with difficulty. She said nothing further, worried she would become even more resentful toward Han Li. But not long after, Qin Ping suddenly ran back with a delighted expression. Furthermore, once he entered, he loudly yelled, "Lord, young Master Han has returned. Furthermore, he has brought back a few guests. Young Master Han hopes Lord will be able to arrange them a residence near his own." When Qin Yan heard this, his heart had finally relaxed. So long as this great immortal didn't suddenly disappear without word, even if he brought back 10, several tens, or even 100 friends back, he wouldn't have any complaints. Since it's honorable nephew Han's request, have them stay at the clear sound courtyard. Also, do not neglect Han Li's guests, Qin Yan said, without taking the time to think. This caused his third wife's complexion to become increasingly unsightly. Yes, this one will carry this out. Qin Ping energetically ran out again with a completely enthusiastic appearance. Lord, this is somewhat improper. Our Qin residence is a great clan. To have these strangers suddenly come in, isn't it a bit too imprudent? The third wife couldn't help but carefully mention this. Her words weren't aimed at Han Li at all. Rather, she was currently feeling uneasy. When Qin Yan heard this, he was slightly surprised, but after a moment of hesitation, he waved his hand and said, "This is of no importance. Friends of honorable nephew Han will not prove to be any problem." Upon hearing Qin Yan speak such favorable words toward Han Li, the third wife was left speechless. At this moment, Han Li was sitting in a chair at his residence. 5 people were sitting in front of him, the 5 friends of Meng Mountain. The youth in their ranks was currently talking non-stop about something. Occasionally, the others would add in a few comments. Han Li, on the other hand, revealed a somewhat thoughtful expression. In the wilderness outside of Yujing, Han Li was actually capable of using his formidable spiritual sense to erasing the blood curse previously placed on the 4. Soon after, he brought these people to infiltrate where a single middle-aged woman was staying. Surprisingly, this matter was carried out without the slightest difficulty. Although the smoothness of the operation was unexpected, Han Li still broke her blood curse and brought them all back to the Qin residence. In truth, Having these people find a different residence was acceptable, but Han Li didn't fully trust them. If they weren't under his watchful eye, he didn't dare to guarantee that these 5 friends of Ming Mountains would truly and sincerely fight this great enemy alongside him, even with the favor of breaking their curse. People's hearts were truly hard to fathom. Although they may be grateful to him today and were willing to risk their lives for him, tomorrow they might feel like their lives were worth more, becoming despicable and ungrateful. This was truly baffling to Han Li. Furthermore, he didn't share a part of their sworn brotherhood. It was quite likely that they would value their own lives more. Naturally, if he were to make use of his own restrictions and poison, he would have absolute control over them. But if he did so, in their eyes he would be no different from their previous slave masters. Over a long period of time, he would be certain to suffer repercussions. If he left them with a vile impression, Han Li wouldn't be able to use them any further. Deep in his heart, Han Li had some other ideas in plan. If the 7 sects were truly able to withstand the invasion of the devil, Tao, he would be able to resume his previous life of cultivation and have these people help him with pill recipes and medicinal ingredients. As such, he wouldn't need to toil away, needlessly traveling to fetch materials. He could instead use that time for bitter cultivation. His pace of cultivation was certain to greatly increase this way. Furthermore, while the cultivation of these 5 friends of Ming Mountain wasn't too weak, it wasn't very large either. They were the ideal choice. Thus, Han Li didn't use such shameful methods in order to control them by force. However, Han Li also knew from experience that unless there were enough benefits, low-level cultivators wouldn't continuously perform errands. Furthermore, he was unsure of their temperament, so he would have to spend more time with them in order to be sure. He would come to a decision once all of this had been concluded. We are truly ashamed. Until now, apart from recognizing a few cultivators that had also been seized, we haven't seen the true appearance of the 2 who gave us our orders. We truly don't know much about them. After the youth said all of this, he bitterly smiled. It's nothing. I already know that the other party is from an evil school called the Black Fiend School. Furthermore, the primary reason why they abduct others is to cultivate evil techniques. That alone is enough. After Han Li heard this, he indifferently smiled. Senior Han. How about we stay here and wait for reinforcements before acting? The recently rescued middle-aged woman suddenly asked a probing question. When the other 4 heard this, they also looked at Han Li with concerned expressions, wanting to see how Han Li would answer. When Han Li heard this, he coldly smiled in his heart. It seemed these people were quite eager to halt any interactions with the Black Fiend School. However, how could there be any reinforcements from the 7 sects? The entirety of the 7 sects was currently in a war with the Devil Tao. Any forces stationed back at the sects were truly lacking. If he were to go and make a report, he was certain that no one would come. But fortunately, on his return a moment ago, he had sent a request to Li Huayawen for help through some Yellow Maple Valley contacts within Eugene. The 7 sects wouldn't be bothered by this matter, but it was impossible for his master to ignore him. For the purpose of fulfilling Li Huayawen's task, Han Li had to provoke such a great problem, and he had no choice but to remain. Otherwise, why wouldn't he run from an insufferable problem? If he could, he would have already made his escape. But in the end, Han Li truly did not know how many reinforcements would come. He reckoned he would be given a few senior martial brothers. With this thought, Han Li answered with a relaxed expression, naturally, this is out of the question. At the very least, we should clearly scout the other party's stronghold and their major figures before reinforcements arrive. This way, we will be able to capture them in a net. To vainly wait at the Qin residence is far too passive, since doing so will only give them time to track us down, leaving us at a disadvantage. We absolutely cannot allow them to so calmly put everything into order. Hearing Han Li's words, the 5 friends of Ming Mountain looked at each other in dismay. The dark-faced old man stroked his beard and said with a deep voice, "Senior does make sense. However, with the mere clues we have on hand, we will be unable to grab onto their tail. The stronghold we originally stayed at is certain to have been abandoned. We have nowhere to start. The second brother silently nodded his head and expressed agreement. Be at ease. From your description of those two Black Fiend school followers, I've already discovered their identities. So long as they are captured alive, it's likely we'll eventually understand the circumstances of the Black Fiend school. Han Li seemed to have already predicted this as he calmly replied. These words startled the five at first, but soon after, they revealed pleasant surprise. They felt that Han Li had become even more profoundly mysterious. Good. Since Senior Han already has a plan, we will listen to Senior's commands. The dark-faced old man pledged resolutely. When Han Li heard this, he nodded his head with satisfaction. We will move tonight. Only by quickly taking action will the enemy be caught off guard. Han Li narrowed his eyes and coldly said this. Tonight? The five friends of Ming Mountain couldn't help but reveal amazement.